Hi, 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Saving Time. I'll read some more of The Adventures of Rebazar Tarz, new book 4 by Dwayne the Great Writer. The Mental Worlds. The saucer finally landed in a very remote area that didn't look too inviting or friendly. I stared out of the window and had a feeling that we were in one of those bad Twilight Zone episodes. Captain Ben came over and told us that this is as far as they can go, because the ship would be spotted by the Deceptors and attacked, and that we would have to creatively make our way from here. He said there was a transport depot on the other side of the mountain and that we could see out the portals. He led us to the door and opened it, and as he did, I suddenly got a strange feeling about me. I could sense that I was in a place that did not want me here. There was an ominous reluctance about what was taking place right now. It was as though a great restriction was embedded with this area, and I was feeling it. Our team moved through the door and jumped out into the air. "You can fly," I said as I watched him hover to the ground. "Come on, Sonny. The atmosphere is a little different here," he said as I followed him out and into the air. I floated to the surface and then immediately wondered what I was doing here. I suddenly realized that this was not the adventure I had imagined at all. I was now in a strange land, to where I felt really strange being here. I stood and gazed around at the different looking surroundings that were very bizarre. There were huge crystal-like shapes everywhere that protruded up from the ground that had a beauty all their own. But to me, I would rather see golden sand in the ocean. This is a cold-looking land that seems so lifeless and dry to where nothing could exist. I saw nothing that looked like a plant or tree. I looked up at the irregular-shaped mountain that was directly in front of us and wondered about it also. Then I suddenly noticed that there were two suns in the sky, and they were both of a rather red tint. Personally, I really do not care for the color red, even though I know that it has to exist. Heather likes red. Red reminds me of deep emotional things that are not really necessary, like personal drama. After my moments of pondering, the saucer quickly took off, which I don't blame them. Then I realized something. How are we getting back to the physical realm, Rebazar? I asked in wonderment of, I don't know what I am really doing here. You are funny once again, Sonny. Didn't it look bad for Indy a lot of times when he went into all the caves and came out with the treasure? To put your mental body at ease, think of our task as mission impossible. We have to get to the other side of this mountain and find a ride to the secret camp of some of the rebel forces that exist there, said RT as he started walking to the base of the mountain. What did he say? Mission impossible? Now I really felt weird. I tried to fly, but I was unable to, and so I walked along the same path as RT. After I don't know how long, we reached the other side of the mountain. As we came around the mountainside, I could see several structures up ahead. There were a couple of small spacecrafts that were sitting on the ground beside them. I reluctantly followed Rebazar as we came to the first structure. He stopped in front of the door that led into the building and turned to me with a grin on his face. "This is where the real adventure begins, Dwayne. The inhabitants here are not like those of the earth, and they have their own way about them, so I will do all the talking. Besides, you do not speak the language of Arcturus," said RT as he opened the door and went through as though he had been here many times. Suddenly, and I mean real suddenly, a shock went through me. I absolutely knew that I was in the outer limits, and that this was one of those really bad episodes. My mind immediately took over and stated to me, "These people are hideous looking." I really could not help the thought from being produced. RT gave me a glance and knew what I was thinking. The creature-like person that was standing behind a type of counter and working on what looked to be a computer gave me a real stare down. I just held my breath for a moment and hoped that RT would say something to get this whatever person's attention away from me. Then RT did begin to talk in a real gibberish that I could not make out at all. It did look as though the creature man was compliant with what RT was telling him. Then RT turned to me. "We have our first ride to a vicinity near where we are to go," said RT as he looked at me and smiled. "How did you get him to give us a ride, sir?" I asked. "Ha ha, Sonny. Simple. I hypnotized him into agreeing with me," he said as he walked out through the door and towards the small craft. I stood for a moment and looked at the scene that I was in. I didn't know that he hypnotized people, I thought. Then I began to wonder if I had been hypnotized to come on this journey. I walked out to the odd little dusty craft that had just enough room for the three of us. I sat in back of RT because he was telling the driver where we were going. The little ship made some noise and finally took off into the air. As we flew high up, I noticed that there was a whole squadron of spaceships that were floating in the air as though they were parked. I figured that this must be some kind of war zone. The little ship we were in sped readily along. It was a very fast vehicle, and I wondered what type of fuel it used. "No fuel needed, Sonny. The dualistic mind power works for all the vehicles here. The Earth people actually help support the mechanics of this place with their adoration of worship to their gods, mainly the Callum. All mental thought must go somewhere, and so the Lord Callum uses the humans of all worlds in the physical, astral, causal, and mental realms as a support with their uncontrollable thoughts and emotions as one of his avenues for his fuel source. It is the same principle that provided Crony and Gerald their positions. When Paul brought his presentation to the public, he also brought what he called the charged word, the who. When the followers of the corporation use the who, they are actually providing the psychic dualistic power to Crony and Gerald, who in turn use it to fleece their followers and keep them in the bowels of the astral worlds. Callum does the same thing with the He can only exist because his followers worship him through his deceptiveness of the poly rulers of Earth. The new sound, new you, allows the person to expand instead of contract like the who and the The new you touches the is and transforms a person into a position of real freedom, while the Hu and the Om impose restrictions. While the humans are doing their funny stuff in their realm, like talking on their cell phones, making plans that will never last, and creating their comfort zones on the earth for future dismal lives, the Callum is having the time of his life here in his kingdom and controlling everything and using their energy and power to sustain his world. This is why he does not want the human race to be disturbed by anything real. Once an unaware soul becomes new and then enters the 7th level of the real universes of sound and light, their being is free forever and they will no longer be a support for anything again. They will have become self-sufficient beings of the real universes. Callum wants Harry and all those he knows to stay in the support position, because Harry and those like him have very strong mental vibrations that really help to support his world. All things exist because of agreement, and the materials that are found on each level correspond accordingly to and provide. The great reality is the one and only trueness. And until the lost souls that have once come from the is realize this simple truth, they are wandering around in the passing dream worlds, trying to find a way out. You and I are here to assist mankind because people are numb and must be shown the way out. The new presentation, said RT as he turned and started talking to the driver. Amazing, I thought. Of course I knew this already and then realized once again that I was in a strange part of the mental heaven. Looking over all of this funny stuff, it was easy to see how the Callum got his support and that it really is so temporary, but it is working. On the surface it looks so substantial and seems to make sense. But when you have been to the true reality, there is no comparison. All souls must first go through the tortures of the psych realms before they can once again enter the real universes, because a great discipline must first take place. I know that I have been through a lot, actually too much, and still I am doing it. This is nuts. I glanced out over the surface of this bizarre land and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. I simply detached myself as though I was doing a patio cover in Westminster. As I was daydreaming, RT pointed to a place on the surface for the driver to land. For some reason, I was actually starting to get tired. There is a place down there where we can rest for the time being, Dwayne. We have been through a lot, but this is nothing compared to what will be coming up soon, he said with a bit of a chuckle. Why did he have to tell me that? I kind of know that I may not be seeing the Pacific Ocean again. Whatever. The little ship landed and we got out. I really felt tired now. I stood for the moment as RT did some funny suggestions to the strange driver, and then the creature nodded and flew off in his little buzzmobile. What a trip this is. Does anybody here know what surfboard wax is? I followed as RT walked over to a very large type of castle, which I really did not notice at first. And then there it is, I thought. Am I paying attention here? Before we walked over to the entrance, RT stopped and looked at me. The Callum God is looking for us. He has his sensors out and it looks as though it is affecting you. Let's get inside of the castle. I know these people here. They assist the real guides all the time, said RT as I nodded and walked with him to the door. Standing at the door, RT uttered some strange words, and then I heard more strange words from inside. Then the door opened. Of course, what greeted us were more unearthly-looking inhabitants that appeared like the creature from the Black Lagoon. Actually, not as bad. I was very detached and pretended that I was on the set of Close Encounters, and Spielberg wanted me to become friends with the aliens. Oh, brother, when will this bad dream end? RT spoke with the creature man and then motioned for me to follow him to where he said we would get something to eat and rest. Eating sounded great, but eating what? Another meal like in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? Monkey brains? Everything here seemed to relate to the movies I have seen over the course of my unnatural life on Earth. We walked down a long hallway. As we did, I could hear some groans from some of the rooms we passed. Are the guests complaining about their meals, I thought? And will they be alive in the morning to reorder? RT actually laughed out loud and said, "The Callum God will like your sense of humor, surfer boy." He didn't seem to, the last time I saw him, sir, I said, not really wanting to see him ever again. Heather and the Three-Headed God. We entered where there was actually something sensible looking. A couch and 2 beds. Cool, I thought, as I went to the bed and stretched out over it. I wanted to sleep and forget everything. I never have a problem sleeping anywhere. I just simply be and I am gone. Well, I did just that and found myself in a very odd situation that took me a few moments to consider. I went into some kind of really eerie dream world where the colorization was not a lot to my liking. It was all set up in some type of ballroom setting that looked outdated. There was a huge floor all around me, and the walls were very tall with all kinds of kooky tapestry. The place was very big and open, and I could sense a Stephen King strangeness about it. I could hear some kind of funny music playing that seemed off-key, but continued to hold a slight tune. Then, from behind one of the curtains, a 3-headed creature came out with a woman, and they danced across the floor together, something like a jagged tango and some watered-down salsa mixed in. The creature definitely was enjoying himself, but the woman seemed to be struggling against her will to have to dance. She seemed as though she was trying to let go as the creature held her to him. It reminded me of the first Batman movie where the Joker was dancing with Bruce Wayne's new girlfriend atop the bell tower. I must admit they did make an interesting couple. Then it hit me like Moe of the Three Stooges. I was seeing the 3-headed god, Callum, and the woman was Heather. He had total control of her and what appeared to be against her will. Heather has a very strong will, and she loves her playtime on the earth with all her Martha Stewart projects. So Callum has a very easy way with her. She is resistive and at the same time submissive to so many things that keep her asleep to her real awareness, because she wants her way in the creative realms, and so she will allow herself to be used by the blinders. I was now in a dream world that I was not familiar with, and I felt a little groggy and stupefied. I sensed that Callum had a strong influence here. The creature would lead Heather around the room and then come real close to me and sneer and snither with the raspy sound of arrogance. I could see the agonizing look on her face as she passed, and his was a continued snare at me with a mocking, subtle laugh. It was as though she could not speak, but only express her captivity, that she must obey to get what she wants from her earthly life and all her desires to be fulfilled. They danced and danced, rather well, I might add, and then at some point the creature stopped and threw her to the floor in a seductive fashion, just like you would see in the movies where the woman takes the torture and still wants more. She looked up at me with a little twinkle in her eyes and a slight smile of temptation. As I looked and pondered with an intenseness, I wondered what the scene meant. But then, of course, I knew. I will continue to read some of The Adventures of Rebazar Tarz. New book 4 by Dwayne the Great Rider. Tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Saving Time. See ya.